Start.
Welcome to the Holistic Kids Show. My name is Zane.
My name is Abdullah.
And my name's Imad.
We're the Holistic Kids here to educate us kids from the inside out. We talk a lot about our favorite topic on this show, food. We Holistic Kids love to eat. But why do we eat?
Food is delicious. Food is power. Food influences our microbiome. Food talks to their genes. Food is information. Food is the most powerful tool to change your health and the planet, as it is the most powerful medicine to heal chronic disease.
Well, let's put that into perspective. Food also contains tens of thousands of medicinal compounds embedded in plants and even animal foods that regulate and influence nearly all of the 37 billion chemical reactions
Or trillion.
that occur in our body every second.
We need food to survive.
So what foods help us the most? Food can be really confusing.
I know, right? And we've been doing this podcast for like 80 episodes on food, and we still don't fully understand that. So while we have the perfect guest here with us today, we are so incredibly honored to speak to Dr. Sarah Ballantyne, and she has created something really amazing. Dr. Sarah is an award-winning public speaker, New York Times best-selling author, and world-renowned health expert. Dr. Sarah Ballantyne, PhD, aka the Paleo Mom, believes that the key to reversing the current epidemics of chronic disease is through scientific literacy. She creates educational resources to help people regain their health through diet and lifestyle choices, informed by the most current evidence-based scientific research. Dr. Sarah has also continued to find the science with Nutrivore, which we'll talk about later. Dr. Sarah seeks to create a positive and inclusive approach to dietary guidance based in science and using nutrient density and sufficiency as its basic principles. She believes in nourishment, not judgment. So thank you so much, Dr. Sarah. We know you are incredibly busy, so we are so honored that you can join us today.
Oh, I am so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure.
It's our pleasure. We read that you have had a 120-pound journey to paleo and optimal health. We would love to hear your story.
So I have a background as a medical researcher. And when my first daughter was born just over 16 years ago, I found myself in a really troublesome spot. I wanted to continue being a medical researcher working at a university, but I also had a new baby who didn't think sleeping was very fun. And I was not healthy enough to be able to balance both of those things. So normally new motherhood and normally actually an academic career doing scientific research are both things that are very demanding, and they require you to be in a really healthy spot in your life to be able to do both of those things. And I just was not. I had 4 autoimmune diseases. I was very overweight. I had borderline type 2 diabetes. I had lots of annoying things like headaches and acid reflux. And so I ended up deciding to take a break from my career as a scientific researcher. And at the time I said, I'm going to focus on being a mom, which was true, but it also gave me time to start using my scientific background to solve the problem of my own health, because I was on a lot of medications prescribed by my doctor, and all they were doing at the time was masking symptoms. They weren't actually getting to the root cause of all of the health challenges that I had. And so over the next few years, I lost a lot of weight using a low-carb diet and found that that didn't make me healthier. Actually, all of my health problems were getting worse. And so it took me going online and learning more about my health conditions and how they related to food to start my journey really learning about nutrition, the immune system, our gut microbiomes, all the bacteria that live in our digestive tracts, and how my food choices and my lifestyle choices were influencing my basic biology. That brought me to the paleo diet. The paleo diet brought me to the autoimmune protocol, and the autoimmune protocol led me to Nutrivore, which is the most expansive version of that nutrients first approach.
Yeah, that is amazing. I mean, you went from having so many chronic diseases to having zero, almost nothing, basically. And obviously, the only way that you can do that, like you said, is through nutrients, and also like the paleo diet, the GAPS diet. There's so many diets out there that can really help you with these diseases. And we talk a lot about food on the show, and foods have nutrients. But what exactly is a nutrient?
That is such a fantastic question because I think most people don't really understand what a nutrient is. And if I want to teach people how to choose foods based on nutrients, that's like the very first thing to teach someone is what is a nutrient. So we can very simplistically think of a nutrient as a raw material that our bodies need. So some of those raw materials are used as building blocks to build all of our cells, all of the structures inside of our cells, our bones, our blood vessels, our skin, right? All of us are built with nutrients, but also every system in our body uses chemical reactions to do its job. So nutrients are also the raw materials that are used for those chemical reactions. Some of them are also used as energy to make those chemical reactions happen. Some of them are used as what are called catalysts. So they're things that speed up that chemical reaction. Some of them are used as what are called cofactors. They're things that allow the chemical reaction to happen but aren't used up. But overall, between all of those chemical reactions, between all of the like building structures in the body that happens on a continuous basis, because our bodies regenerate all the time, we use up nutrients. So we're using them up just by living, which means we have to continuously top up our nutrient stores from foods. And that's why choosing foods based on their nutrients is so important, because if any chemical reaction doesn't have the nutrients it needs, that chemical reaction can slow down, or it could change to produce a different product that's not as good, or it might stop altogether. And the organ or the biological system that needs that chemical reaction, now it can't work properly. And over time, if let's say our heart doesn't have the right nutrients it needs to beat, then over time that's going to cause strain on the heart, and that's where you might get some forms of heart disease. So nutrients are really, really important for our overall health because every part of our body needs them in order to work.
I mean, it's so amazing how much we need nutrients. Without nutrients, then our body would actually just fail. And like whenever you're eating food, you don't think about what kind of nutrients am I getting. Like if you're eating a donut per se, and you all you get is like a few nutrients here and there. But then compare that to a raspberry, you're getting so much benefit from just one raspberry compared to an entire donut. It's just amazing how it just supplies your body with what it needs.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And one of the things that I've been trying to do in my work with Nutrivore is help people understand a little bit more about what nutrients are in what foods, because there's no one food that has all of the nutrients that our bodies need, right? We're not pandas. We can't just eat bamboo and be healthy. There's actually very few species in the world that can only eat one food. And so understanding that a mushroom has different nutrients than broccoli, but we need both of those nutrients. And then those have different nutrients than, say, salmon, but that is really beneficial nutrients for us, is actually a really important part of being able to make sure we get all of the nutrients our bodies need, rather than like if you only eat a couple of different foods, chances are really good you're not going to get all of the nutrients. You might get enough of a lot of them, but you'll still have shortfalls of other ones, and that can increase our risk for chronic disease over time.
Yeah, and over 90% of all Americans are actually deficient in key nutrients. And us kids are no exception.
So
That's
why do you
true.
think that is?
So I think there's a lot of really complicated reasons that go into the really high rates of nutrient deficiencies and insufficiencies. I think one of those reasons is the types of foods that you can get in the grocery store. A lot of those foods are made to be delicious. They're made to be shelf stable. They're made to be cheap, but they're not necessarily made with nutrients in mind. So a lot of foods that a lot of people eat, especially in westernized countries, don't have a lot of nutrients, but they do have a lot of energy. Some of the healthiest foods are more expensive. So if you can't afford like vegetables, for example, that makes it really hard to get the nutrients that you need. And I also think that there's so much confusion in the world about what are healthy foods. There's all different kinds of diets out there. And if you looked at every single diet, pretty much every single food is a bad food on one diet or another. And so because there's so much confusion as to what foods are healthy, I think for some people that makes them give up trying, and then they just want to choose the yummy foods or the foods that they can afford. And then that means they're not paying attention to nutrients. So I think it's complicated. And I think for different people, there's different parts of those challenges that are contributing more or less. But I think there's a lot of reasons that go into it. And I think the most important thing that we can do is just help people understand what are the healthiest foods, and then understand how they can choose more of those depending on where they live, what kind of food they have access to, and then what their budget is.
And that's why don't just choose a random diet. Find the diet that works with you the best.
We hear a lot of conflicting information from everywhere. Eat this, don't eat that. Why is there so much judgment around food?
That's such a really important question. I think that there's a few reasons for this. So it starts with like conflating, right? So like making things equal that shouldn't be equal, being thin and being healthy. So a lot of diets right now are all about losing weight, but losing weight doesn't make you healthier. Being like having healthy habits is what makes you healthier, right? So like being active and eating a healthy diet and getting enough sleep and managing your stress are the things that make you healthier, and those things make you healthier even if you're overweight. But diets right now, if you look at movie stars or models on magazine covers, right now our society really rewards people who are thin. And so diets are telling us that we should be thin and that that's the most important thing. And the way diets have been structured since about the 1970s is they've all been about cutting something out. So in the 1970s, it was all about low fat. And then in the 1990s, it was all about low carb. And then in the 2000s, we started to see different types of low carb diets. We started to see paleo and primal diets, GAPS and SCD diets. But we also have, vegetarian and vegan diets are much older than those. Then we started to see in the 2010s, we started to see ketogenic diets, carnivore diet over the last couple of years. And what they all of those diets have in common, generally, as a general rule, is they're all defined on what you don't eat. And so what happens when you do a diet to lose weight is you will lose, almost every diet works to lose weight. But then as you lose weight, two things happen. One is your metabolism slows down, so you need less and less calories to keep losing weight. The other thing that happens is your you get hungrier. So there's a hormone that's produced in your stomach that tells your body that you're hungry. And when you're losing weight, you make more and more of that hormone. So eventually you stop losing weight because you're just fighting this battle with your own body. And because all of these diets are described by what you avoid, the natural thing when it worked at first, you're like, oh, that worked at first. I got what I wanted by not eating these things. Well, now that it's not working, what am I going to do? I'm going to stop eating more things. And so over that 50 years of different diets for weight loss, what's happened is more and more diets that are really restrictive have gotten more and more popular. So most of the like really popular diets now, they like have even fewer different foods in them than diets did 50 years ago. And the problem with that is that it makes like even more nutrient deficiencies, which means it's going to harm our health even more over time in the future. So I think what's happened with diet, what we call sort of diet culture, which is like all of the conversations around like why people want to go on diets, right? Most people go on diets to lose weight, not necessarily to get healthier. Like it's a very special thing what you're doing with this podcast, focusing on food for health rather than on food for like a certain body type. But the nutrition information that most people have access to is really not focused on health at all. It's really focused just on losing weight and what you have to cut out to get there. So we can fix that by shifting this whole conversation to talk about health and what that actually looks like, and talk about the importance of a really varied diet. So a diet where you're eating a lot of different foods, and kind of change the whole conversation around health and diet and how foods fit into that.
Yeah, and that's why through as time goes on, things change. Like you're saying, the diets they change. From the 1970s all the way to now. People are using the diets for different things as well, and people are focusing a lot more on weight, even though weight isn't everything. It is really important to get all of those veggies, get all of those fruits. We love fruits when it comes to our sweet tooth, because they're
Yes.
such a good substitute, and they're healthy, and we basically can benefit out of those fruits. And that's why we say to eat the rainbow diet, because that's how you get the most variety.
Did you know there's actually studies that have shown that if you eat, they call them 5 different colors. So red's a color, orange and yellow is a color, green is a color, blue and purple go together, and then white and brown go together. And there's studies that show that if you eat all 5 different color vegetables and fruits throughout the day, that it actually has more health benefit than just eating 5 vegetables and fruits a day. So you get more benefit if they're all different colors compared to just eating enough of them.
Yeah, and also just to clarify, even you don't always have to eat fruits. There's a lot of products out there that have clean ingredients, and because of those clean ingredients, because of those better ingredients, you can get more nutrients than the worst version, which is why we love to use brands that have either the least amount of artificial chemicals and artificial ingredients, because they don't provide any nutrients. That's why we love to get the ones that are all natural, the ones that have nuts, seeds, different kinds of flowers, so we can get that variety into our diet.
Yeah.
We would love to know more about Nutrivore. What is Nutrivore?
So the idea behind Nutrivore is exactly what we've been talking about. The idea is really simple. It's just to get all of the nutrients that your bodies need from the foods that you eat. But what's tricky about it is also what we've already been talking about, is that most people don't know what foods those are. And so I've launched a brand new website, Nutrivore.com. And on there, there's a lot of information about what foods have the most nutrients. And there's even something called the Nutrivore score, which is a measurement of the nutrient density of foods. So I spent a lot of time looking at all of the science on how this works and creating the mathematical formula. And it basically measures the amount of nutrients, total nutrients. There's 33 nutrients that go into the calculation per calorie of a food. And that can help you identify what are the best foods within that group, right? So you don't want to always just pick the highest food because that doesn't give you all of the nutrients you need, but you can kind of look at the different food families that are really important. So different families of vegetables, different families of fruit, seafood, for example, and then you can use the Nutrivore score to pick the highest nutrient density options. And you could even use it to pick the most nutritious snack or the most nutritious dessert. So it's always about what understanding within that category. So it's not always about the highest number, but about making little tiny improvements with every choice so you can get more nutrients throughout the day.
So, how do us kids know what nutrients and how much we need them?
So I think the easiest way to focus on nutrients is to think about your meals, your plate, having half of it covered in vegetables. I think that is the most important thing that you could possibly do to make sure you're getting enough nutrients is think about your plate and have half of it be vegetables and ideally like a few different vegetables. And then your other half you can divide in half again. So you've got quarters. 1/4 can be a protein food. So that could be eggs or chicken or salmon or oysters, or if you can eat dairy, that could be cheese, or it could be broth, right? So a nice, good protein food. And then that other 1/4 is some kind of starchy food. So if you can eat lentils, that could be lentils, but it could also be a sweet potato or winter squash. And then you're getting even more vegetables. And then thinking of fruit, exactly like you already said, fruit is such a great snack. It's such a great dessert. Like definitely having a couple pieces of fruit a day is really healthy for us. Drinking mostly water and then using healthy fats to cook our food like olive oil. Herbs and seasonings are amazingly good for us. So using them as much as we want. Nuts and seeds are great snacks. They're also great like condiments, like they're great ingredients for meals. So I think the easiest way is to just think about your plate and think about how to divide your plate so that you have representation from all of those important like nutrition food families so that you're getting all of the different nutrients. And when you think about it that way, you don't actually need to worry about the details. You don't actually need to worry about whether or not salmon's higher than chicken, because there's also research showing that the more different foods we eat, the healthier we are. So we can just think about mixing it up from day to day and making those foods taste really good and just having a lot of fun with all those flavors.
Yeah.
With so many kids with nutrient deficiencies, how can we use the site to optimize our nutrients?
So I think a really fun way to do it would be to go to Nutrivore.com and click on the icon that looks like a magnifying glass. And that will take you to the Nutrivore score search page. And you can look up the Nutrivore scores of whatever food you're interested in. There's 8,000 foods in the database right now that you can look up. And have a look at like how amazing spinach is and broccoli is, and how they're like way higher than green beans, but green beans are still good if that's your favorite. And what you can do is then take those numbers to your parents and say, hey, look at how high broccoli is or kale or mushrooms. Can we have this the next time you go grocery shopping? I think a really great way is to like show your parents the numbers and then ask for that food. And maybe if you want to get really fancy, you could even find a recipe that uses that food and say, hey, Mom, there's this new recipe. I want to try it. And maybe help your mom in the kitchen and help doing that cooking. I think advocating for healthy foods is really, really powerful. And it will help with that number to show your parents how valuable that food is. But even just you taking that action to be really like interested in eating, nutrient dense foods, I think is really powerful. And I can say that as a mom, when my kids ask for a healthy food, I always want to try to find a way to say yes. I always want to try to figure out how to make that food for them, because it's so good for us to grow up eating those foods, so that we just kind of learn how to eat healthy without really thinking about it, because that's how we do it all the time.
Yeah, and there's so many different vegetables then besides broccoli, spinach, Brussels sprouts, and carrots. There's so many. You have squash, and there's so many different kinds of squash as well. Like what kind of? Do you know any kinds?
Like
Pumpkin.
winter squash.
Yeah, there's a lot of different kinds of.
Pumpkin.
Yeah, also pumpkin.
Yeah,
like that.
pumpkins with squash.
So there's so many nutrients you can get from those kinds of vegetables that you didn't even know existed from before.
One of the things that I find really fun to do is if I ever see something new in the produce section in the grocery store. So it doesn't matter if it's just like a new kind of potato or a new kind of leafy green. Or one time I found sea beans, which are like a kind of they're kind of like a seaweed, but they come from freshwater marshes. They were very salty, but I thought they were tasty. Whenever I find something new, I get really excited to try that new thing. And I think for a lot of people, like you might not have ever tried something that is in your grocery store. And so another thing to do is to go to the store with your parent and like point out hey, that's something that we never have. Can we try that? And maybe it's rainbow chard, or maybe it's a really cool like taro root or lotus root or something like that. And then when I see it in the store, I just get it. And then I figure out what I'm going to make with it when I get home. And it's a really fun way to like expand your exposure to new flavors, but also try new foods and find a new favorite.
So please tell us more about you, your amazing work, and the free guides you have on your website.
Yeah, so I just launched a new website that I've been working on for 2.5 years. It's called Nutrivore.com. And my team and I are actually adding new articles to it almost every single day. So it has, I think, 250 articles on it now. But that's just the tiny beginning of what we want to build on this site. So come and check it out, and definitely come back often, because there's so much new stuff getting added all the time. And if you click on that top in the menu, there's a button called Join. And that's where you can find how to get 5 free guides in your inbox. So they're basically like all the introduction that you need for Nutrivore. It's not any part of any diet. It's how to be Nutrivore on top of your diet. So however you eat now, you can still be a Nutrivore. And there's 5 different guides on like all the most important foods to eat, top 100 Nutrivore score foods you can get in the grocery store, easy steps to Nutrivore, the different foundational food families, how to balance your plate. All of those free guides are there directly to your inbox. And you can also find there my social media. I'm Dr. Sarah Ballantyne, pretty much almost everywhere on social media that you might go, or that your parents might go, but that's where you can find me on your favorite site. So if you like TikTok, I'm there. If you like Instagram, I'm there. I'm not on Snapchat though, sorry.
That was so empowering. Everyone, make sure to follow Dr. Sarah on social media. She is such an inspiration.
Food is delicious.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sarah. Let's recap Dr. Sarah's key points. Now,
Food is delicious, but food also gives our bodies the nutrients it needs to work optimally. A nutrivore eats nutrients. A nutrients is a substance uses by us to help us survive.
And these can also be proteins, fats, carbohydrates, vitamins, and minerals to help our body function and grow. Because without these, our body would just fail.
We need these nutrients for all the chemical reactions that are happening in our bodies. If any chemical reactions doesn't have the nutrient it needs, it can make us sick. Nutrients are important for our overall health. But unfortunately,
90% of Americans are deficient in so many nutrients.
there is not just one food that contains all the nutrients. We need all of the nutrients. So a Nutrivore helps us understand what nutrients are in foods you can eat. That is why becoming a Nutrivore is so important.
And remember, no food, if real food, is good or bad. We just need to make sure we give our body the nutrients it deserves. And to remember to eat in moderation. The higher the nutritive quality of our overall diet, the more different foods we eat, the better it is for you. Go to the store with your parents and try something new.
Fill your plates with vegetables like alliums, also known as onion family, cruciferous vegetables, mushrooms, root vegetables, leafy vegetables, fruits, mushrooms, and legumes. And choose fish like shellfish and organ meat if you do meat. For our proteins, season liberally with herbs and spices. Cook with healthy fats like olive oil, and eat health promoting foods like nuts and seeds.
And remember, there are so many different kinds of vegetables and fruits. You'll be so surprised on how much fun it can be to expand your flavors.
Remember, nourishment, not judgment. Wow, Dr. Sarah, that was amazing. We are so thankful for your wisdom and time today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Zansari.
I'm Abdullah.
And I'm Imad.
Follow my family and I on social media. Holistic Mom D, and look out for my mom's book, The Holistic Arcs, your guide to chronic inflammation and disease. The Holistic Arcs for kids, parenting healthy brains and bodies in a changing world. And the new book that's coming out, Adam's Healing Adventure. I mean, not the new book. Adam's Healing Adventures of Power Rainbow Foods. And the newest one that's now coming out, Adam's Healing Adventures. The Gratitude is a Superpower. That was the new one. Kids need to learn from other kids. Please download our podcast from iTunes and leave reviews so other kids and families can benefit. We need to work together to create a healthy future for all of us and the planet. Join us next week for another episode of the Holistic Kids Show, where kids can empower kids. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.